A lot of breaking news going on today, New Year's Day. It's 2025. Let's get right into it. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. Chris is back tomorrow night in his chair at 8 o'clock. I'll be filling in tonight. Been a pleasure to do it. Never expected that I'd end my stint of filling in for Chris with these kinds of stories. FBI is investigating a terrorist attack in Las Vegas where a Cybertruck blew up in front of the Trump Hotel. We'll get to that a little bit later tonight. But first, I want to get to the latest in New Orleans. New Orleans, a man in a pickup flying on Islamic State flag plowed into a large crowd in New Orleans French Quarters earlier today. At least 15 people are dead, with more than 30 or so injured, what authorities are calling a terrorist attack. Now, 2 police officers were injured in the shootout with a suspect who is an Army veteran who was killed in a firefight. The FBI identified him as a 42-year-old man, U.S.-born citizen from Texas. The flag was attached to the trailer hitch of the rented Ford pickup truck, in which investigators found weapons and a potential explosive device. Investigators are still working to learn more about the driver's potential ties and terrorist organizations. I reached out to a fellow broadcaster, Neil Williamson. Neil goes by Hondo. He is a UGA, University of Georgia graduate, veteran of more than 30-some years of sports broadcasting of Georgia sports, part of the Georgia Network tailgate show, and in New Orleans for what was supposed to be tonight's Sugar Bowl game. Neil, thanks for taking the time to join me tonight. Westside Jeff in with for Chris Crock. Neil, I understand you're staying in the French Quarters. Tell me a little bit, Neil, if you will, about how close you're staying to the scene of the crime.
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, thanks for having me on. We are. I woke up this morning to a flurry of texts. Even my wife didn't call me because she knew that I'd have to be up late tonight. At least thought I would doing the game. And woke up to a flurry of texts and right away went to the news reports to see what was going on and found out that the accident was actually an accident. The attack was actually. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. Was 3 blocks from us. So I'm on Canal Street, 3 blocks from Bourbon Street. About any one of our quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Carson Beck could all throw a football from where we're staying, from our front door to the corner of Bourbon and Canal.
Wow. Did you not hear that in the middle of the night? Did you sleep through it? It wasn't close enough? The gunfire and some of the other activities didn't wake you up in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning?
It did not. We're in a huge hotel, and there's a lot of big hotels and big buildings in between us, again, being 3 blocks away. And then where we were able to figure out where the actual attack took place and where the police were a couple more blocks up the street there, I guess. At least that's where they took out the I'm trying not to curse.
The perpetrator.
On live radio. Yeah, the perpetrator. That's a nice word for him. That's where they took him out. But no, I didn't hear it. And there were, it's New Year's Eve in New Orleans. There were explosions at 10. There were police cars all night. So you just put in the earplugs and try to get to sleep. Too old to be out there on Bourbon Street, middle of the night, anyway, having to watch
especially when you're calling the Sugar Bowl game tonight, supposedly. Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew member WSB, live with Westside Jeff and for Chris Crock. Neil, what's your perspective of the event of last night? I mean, you traveled to New Orleans to do a big game, part of the radio crew for Georgia Bulldogs against a pretty good team down there in Notre Dame, and you find yourself right in the middle of a big news story. Your perspective?
Yeah, it sure throws a curveball. Jeff, I'm middle-aged, so I've seen this stuff before. I lived in Atlanta. I was actually in Centennial Olympic Park in 1996 at midnight, and we had little ones with us. My brother was in from out of town, and my sister lives in Atlanta, and my wife and I in Atlanta. We were all in the park and decided to get out of there and get home because we wanted to go see track and field the next morning and at the Olympic Stadium. So I guess you could say it's not the first time I've seen a terrorist act or been this close to it, both time-wise and distance-wise, certainly closer distance-wise this time. And, it's horrifying. Everybody out there knows it's horrifying. I'm sitting here trying to craft my open for tomorrow for our show, and, there, as President Lincoln once said, our words are poor. What was it? A poor power. We don't have the power to add or detract from what happened here.
Yeah.
Words are not enough. So it's just really, really terrible. And a UGA student was one of the injured, and I don't know how she's doing. I just know that she was in pretty bad shape early on, and I had heard that she was getting a little bit better. So prayers are for her and for everyone else, dead and alive, victims of this heinous attack on these people and on our country.
Yeah, we're going to find out as time goes about those who have been killed and those who have been injured. WFAA here in Dallas reported that I think it was the brother of a TCU football player was one of those got caught up in that.
Tiger Besh is what I saw.
Yep.
Who actually played football for Princeton. So.
Yep. We're talking to Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew, part of WSB Radio out of Atlanta, been covering UGA football for over 30 years or so. Neil, he goes by Hondo, by the way. If you ever listened to UGA football, you've heard of Hondo before on the broadcast. Hondo, if you don't mind me calling you Hondo. Hondo, if you don't mind.
Everybody does.
That's what I figured. How has the communication from authorities been? You have an inside look that the average guy doesn't. You're part of the broadcast crew, network broadcast crew. People can hear you nationwide with your broadcast of UGA football. And UGA football's been in the spotlight for several years and winning national championships. It is a preeminent college football team in this country. So you have the visibility that the average person doesn't have the inside to. How have authorities done with communication from the authorities and law enforcement to the UGA football team, as well as Notre Dame and all the crews involved with the Sugar Bowl?
That's a really great question, but I have stayed clear of that. First thing I did after I called my wife and reassured my sister was I reached out to our athletic director. Josh Brooks and I have been friends for a long time. Obviously, I've worked for him and with him for a long time, and I reached out to say, do you need anybody to carry a clipboard right now? Because I'm volunteering. If you do you need anybody to check off names? We have a huge travel party of fans here and families, and all of our other coaches from other sports who are not playing this week are all here. We've got a huge travel party and employees, and I don't have to tell you how big the football staffs are these days. And he said, all good, and then I just cleared out of his way. I made sure that I was out of his way. The law enforcement, they're not talking to people like me. We're way down on the totem pole. They're talking to, obviously, the head of the Sugar Bowl, an old friend of mine, Jeff Hundley, who's the executive director of the Sugar Bowl, and they're talking to, and Jeff, and whoever his point person is with UGA. I would assume, again, that it's Josh, our athletics director. He's talking to them. Our president of the university is here, and he's in constant contact with Josh as well. So I'll let them all handle it up at that pay grade, and I just wait and see what they send down to us. Like, guess what? We're playing tomorrow instead. Guess what? You're flying home at this time. Guess what? Great. Just point me in the direction. It's actually, traveling with a football team is, I was never in the military, but it's not unlike the regimentation that you would have, one would find in the military.
Sure.
In that, people say to me, where are you staying when you're in Austin? I'll go, I don't know. I get on a charter. I get off a charter. I get on the buses. We get a police escort to a hotel. You walk in. They hand you your key. You go to the stadium the next day. You get on the buses. Police escort you out of the stadium, and you get on a charter and you go home. So it's, we're just, I don't want to say automatons, but we're just troops that are part of the whole regiment.
I get it. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. Chris is back in this chair tomorrow night. We're talking to Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew and part of WSB's broadcast as part of that out of Atlanta. Neil, I got to hit a 3.5 minute break. If you don't mind, I want to keep you through this and get into a few more questions on the other side of this. And one of them will be about the game time tomorrow and how that plays out, because that's an interesting and the impact to both teams, not only Georgia, but also Notre Dame. This is a very unique situation we're talking about. We're continuing the coverage of what happened in New Orleans, the terrorist attack. We're talking to Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock and News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock. Chris is back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock here on WBAP. We're following continuing coverage of the events out of Las Vegas with a Cybertruck that blew up outside of President Trump's hotel there. We're still following that news. Elon Musk has weighed in on that. We'll get into that in the next half hour or so. Also, the story out of New Orleans, and that is the latest there, is the death toll is up to 15. President Joe Biden said that suspect social media posts indicate he was inspired by ISIS. The Sugar Bowl has been rescheduled. It was originally supposed to be on right now tonight, and it's rescheduled for 4 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. They're dealing with a very unique situation there. We're talking with Neil Williamson. Neil is a part of the University of Georgia Bulldogs radio broadcast crew. He's been a part of their crew with WSB for many, many years. If you ever listen to UGA football, you've heard Hondo many a times. We're talking to him live from New Orleans right now. Neil, as I talked to you, and one of the things, thank you for sticking around, you had said a moment ago that we talked about how authorities have kept up to speed, and your answer to that was you kind of stayed out of the way. And I'm very familiar with UGA football and a lot of football programs. As you and I have talked before, a friend of ours, family friend, played for UGA the last 4 years, so I've gone to several UGA games, away games. And you're right, as I've attended those things, I've seen it very up close. It's very regimented. You mentioned them almost in a military way. You get on the flight at this time, they literally time out everything, and it is very orchestrated. There's not a lot of free time. It's you be here at this time, here at this time, here at this time. It's interesting, Neil, as I talk to you, you almost sound numb-like, if I can use that word. Would I be accurate in that?
No, that's the Zoloft.
Can I have some?
Not Jeff. Not Jeff. Really, I'm actually a very passionate man. I've got I'm very highly opinionated. I've got a lot of different feelings about different things that I'm not afraid to express. But on my wife's orders and the doctor's prescription, I've been medically calmed down for about 20 years. So
just don't take it tomorrow up until 4 o'clock after the game, right?
Yeah. Come 1 o'clock when I'm on the air, I'll be alive and kicking. That's for sure.
Attaboy. We're talking to Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldog broadcast crew. Neil, the game has been postponed till tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern time. It's 3 o'clock Dallas time. I found that real interesting. My first question about that is, all day long, as people are reaching out to me saying, why is the game canceled? My interpretation of that has been that I think the FBI and investigators probably knew something we didn't know, that they felt there was still a potential threat, and that's why the postponement. Talk about the postponement. How surprised are you about them postponing the game and making that decision?
Not even slightly. Okay, not even slightly. Here's several reasons why. First of all, the reports are that this jerk did not act alone. That it appears that he's had accomplices. Reports are that they have blown up. I mean, I was standing down the street. I didn't hear them, but I was standing down the street when they were blowing up the IEDs that they found, the alleged IEDs. I don't know that for sure. I haven't kept up with all of it minute to minute, but 2 different call outs of fire in the hole as they stuck them in those boxes that they blow them up in.
Sure.
So, the first thing that's been paramount to everyone has been safety. Safety. So IEDs often get left around and set around so that they affect the first responders. So the first responders come, load up on police, fire, and all the rest, trying to figure out and mark stuff off and save people and get people into ambulances and do all the other investigation that they're doing, and then they set off bombs. So that's the first thing, is keeping everybody safe. Now, what I would suggest to you and anybody who's wondering why they would delay the game, first of all, out of respect for the families and for those who have been injured and killed. The second thing is how many of these police went to work last night at 6 p.m., right? And then all of a sudden at 3 p.m. when they think it's all about to be over, the streets are really clearing some, they will at 4:30 or whatever, then this happens. So all those cops now are working through the morning, and who knows how long. And everybody who is off is working. And they've called in the state patrol to work. And for tomorrow, there will be the governor of Louisiana has called in the National Guard. So he's sending 100 troops here to help with all of this. So as far as making sure that people would be safe, going to the Superdome, walking along Poydras Street, talking about 80,000 people coming out of, all different parts of the hotel rows over here near Canal and walking down Poydras Street, who knows what IEDs may be sitting there waiting for people. If these perpetrators are as evil, and we know they are, as they are, you have to sweep the Superdome. You have to set up all new layers of security probably for the Superdome. So first of all, out of respect for those who have lost their lives. Second of all, out of respect to the police and the all of the different people who are providing the security, and letting them get rest and get caught up on some of this stuff. And third of all, the safety of the fans. It all makes plenty of sense that they would delay this kickoff till tomorrow. I mean, we were all wondering. I was speculating. This is no one but me. I was speculating. Eric Zier, who played quarterback for us back in the 90s, played for Bill Belichick and Tony Dungy in the NFL. Eric is one of my broadcast partners, one of my best friends, and we were having a late breakfast after all of this stuff had broken, and after we had found out about it, rather. And I was suggesting to him, I wouldn't be surprised if they moved the game out of New Orleans.
Interesting.
Right?
We're talking
because you can only extend your police force so much.
Sure. Talking with Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew member, works for WSB Radio. If you listen to UGA football at all, you hear Hondo, and that's who we're talking to today. He's live in New Orleans. Did it surprise you, Hondo, the game was moved till 4 o'clock tomorrow? I would have expected maybe move it into prime time.
Well, I'll tell you my theory on that. And again, I don't know anything, but I do know how a lot of these people think. Okay. Again, first of all, from a safety perspective, being able to watch 80,000 people walk down the street and provide security at 12 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon is a lot different than if they're walking down the street at 7 at night and coming out at 2 in the morning. Sure. A lot more places for bad guys to hide or to go set up bad things. Right. And again, the taxing on the security forces that are going to be there. That's the first thing, is light is our friend usually in these situations.
Sure.
The second thing is that the teams, we talked in the last segment, Jeff, about the regimentation of all of this. These kids have to go to class. These kids, the winning team is going to have to prepare for a game next week against Penn State, and to now not only be a day behind Penn State in physical recovery and preparation, but to lose a day and now be 2 days behind them, and on top of that, not get back until 5 in the morning with your charter. That's you're really losing a whole lot of time there. That gives the other team a huge advantage and makes it very difficult for your team to adjust and get healthy and get rested. So moving it to the daytime made enormous sense to me. I'm sure that if they ask the coaches, both coaches probably said, definitely want to move it earlier if ESPN will let us.
Got it.
First of all, security will let us, and second of all, ESPN.
Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs broadcast crew member, works for WSB Radio out of Atlanta. Got about a minute left, Neil. How's this impact tomorrow's game? How does events and the movement postponement affect both teams and the Sugar Bowl tomorrow at 4 o'clock East Coast time?
Well, all I can really speak to, Jeff, is the on-field product, and I don't think it's going to affect it because both teams are in the same boat. Okay, if one of the teams was just flying in today, or what, if things were different for the two teams, but everything's very equal. Both teams have had their regimentation, their schedules thrown off dramatically. And the other thing is the players hate sitting around all day for night games.
Yeah, they do.
And to ask them to do it for another day, I'm sure the coaches are happy to get them out there and let them start hitting.
Neil, have a great game day tomorrow. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me tonight. I appreciate it very much. Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs. You can hear him on WSB Radio out of Atlanta, part of the Georgia broadcast crew. He'll be covering the Sugar Bowl tomorrow. He normally would be on right now, but because of the breaking news events in New Orleans, they postponed the Sugar Bowl to tomorrow at 4 o'clock East Coast time. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, Neil. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. It's Neil Williamson, University of Georgia Bulldogs, part of the broadcast crew. He's with WSB Radio out of Atlanta. He's been around a long time. He's experienced that. I want to talk a little bit about this and some updates on the other side of this. Got to hit Bottom of the Hour News with Mickey Briggs in the newsroom. On the other side of that, we'll continue the conversation, continuing coverage of what's going on not only in New Orleans, but also in Las Vegas. A terrorist attack confirmed in New Orleans, and the discussion of whether or not it's a terrorist attack in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Boy, I'm grateful for that opportunity to talk to Neil Williamson. He is a University of Georgia graduate and a veteran of more than 35 years of sports broadcasting in Georgia. Hondo, as he goes by, co-hosts several shows for UGA Bulldogs and is in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. The Sugar Bowl would normally be going on tonight. I find it real. It's very, very rare. Boy, you know my story. I'm born and raised up in Columbus, Ohio, is where I'm from, and been on radio for a long time. Didn't grow up to want to be a talk show host, just kind of fell into it and love doing it. The opportunity to me, talk radio is about a conversation with the community, and that's what I love about it. It's just a one-on-one conversation, just you and I. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to Hondo about the events. And sometimes in life, God puts you in the right place at the right time to do certain things, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in such a position, to be a voice of reason, a voice of common sense during a time like this. And I appreciate a fellow broadcaster taking the time to talk to me. 48 hours ago, I got on the phone. I called our program director, Bruce Collins, and said, Bruce, what are the plans? This was 48 hours ago. 50 hours ago. What are the plans tomorrow night for New Year's Eve? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, we're going to have something go down. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know where it's going to be. He said, do you think? And I said, yes. I said to him, I'll be more surprised if I wake up on New Year's Day and there's no significant mass, I didn't want to say killing, but some mass event that's dominating the news. I'll be more surprised if I wake up on New Year's Day and there's nothing like that than I would be if there is. And I said, I don't know if it's going to be, New York, Chicago, L.A., Dallas, Miami, wherever it's going to be. And I said, my gut, I remember sitting there talking to him. It's funny because this morning as I woke up and caught the news, Mrs. Westside Jeff also came in and said, uh-oh, you talked about this. And I said, yeah. And, well, 50 hours ago or so, she even reminded me, she said, you were talking to Bruce and saying that there's going to be an event. You didn't know where. And I specifically said to him at the time, I don't feel it's going to be in New York. I think New York is pretty locked down, and I'd be real surprised if it was New York. I said, my guess is it's going to be at some other sizable event, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's in one of the cities where there's a big football game. I didn't think it'd be Pasadena because it's too small of a town, so to speak. New Orleans made all the sense in the world. Atlanta made all the sense in the world. And it hurts me to wake up this morning and know that what I had suspected was real. Last night when I got off the air sitting in Chris Croc's show, I stayed at the studio for another hour and 90 minutes just expecting maybe something would go wrong and somewhere around the country. And finally, when nothing did, I said, okay, I'm on my way home, going to get a good night's sleep. And lo and behold, 3 o'clock in the morning, so a couple hours later, we know what happened in New Orleans. It was a terrorist attack. And I had said to the program director, Bruce Collins, today, we talked a little bit about it real quickly, and I said, what's interesting about this to me, and by the way, Jeff is the name, Westside Jeff in for Chris Croc. Chris is back tomorrow night. And if you want to weigh in, I'd love to hear your perspective at 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. You can also catch me across social media on Facebook, on X, and Instagram at Westside Jeff. I said to Bruce this morning, I said, the interesting thing about the event in New Orleans in Vegas is mostly New Orleans, because the Vegas thing came to light a little bit later. And in New Orleans, unfortunately, the latest there is, as we just talked about, and we just talked to Neil about it, is the latest is the death toll has risen to 15 plus. President Joe Biden spoke just a little while ago and said that the social media posts from the suspect has indicated that he was inspired by ISIS. And the Sugar Bowl has been rescheduled for 4 o'clock East Coast time tomorrow, so it's 3 o'clock Dallas time. I had said to Bruce earlier today, if you woke up this morning and heard the news of what went on in New Orleans, and you come to find out more than 10 people, now 15 plus, have died from the event, and you found out that the killings were all done by a gun and a gunman, it would have been a mass gun event. And all day long, you couldn't live with anybody with a D behind their political persuasion, because every Democrat in this country would have been all over social media. They would have been all over national media. They would have been all over local media. They would have put their face all over television. And their message would have been, the Republicans are bad. I blame the Republicans. I blame Trump. It's always Trump's fault. And I blame their opposition to gun control, or lack thereof, because they would have made it a political point. It would have been a political narrative statement for them. But unfortunately for them, this event doesn't give them a political narrative. In fact, the Republicans have a little political narrative, because there was talk throughout the day. I saw many times, we don't know who's in our country, close the borders. Now, good, bad, and different, the suspect is an American citizen from Texas, served in the military. So this is not an illegal immigrant. I think that's good. I hate to hear that it would be an illegal immigrant. I don't want this to be a political matter. To me, this is not a political matter. To me, I don't want this to be a political matter. I don't want this to be an issue of Republicans or Democrats, the left or the right. This is an American issue. This is an American issue. And the media will break this event down, as we always do, with what went wrong, what were the failures, and what are the solutions. And here's what I'll tell you about that. You cannot, no matter what party you're affiliated with, no matter what your political persuasion, no matter how you feel about immigration, no matter how you feel about border control, border security, no matter how you feel about anything policy related, you cannot legislate against evilness. You can't. This is not an issue of guns or no guns. This is not an issue of ISIS, no ISIS. It comes into play. This is an issue of evil. You cannot legislate evilness. There's evilness in this country. We see it time after time with Columbine shooting, with Newtown shooting, with Uvalde. We see it with other events where people get in their vehicles and drive it through crowds. This was a guy that intentionally got into a vehicle, went around police barricades with the intention, that was his intention. His intention was a mass killing event. His vehicle of that happened to be a truck. If it were a gun, it would have been a different message, politically motivated, that the Democrats would have made a point. If it were an axe, it would have been different. But in the end, it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. This is an evil person. This is the act of the devil. This is just somebody that is just deranged, and you cannot legislate evilness. Period. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'd love to hear your perspective. I'd love to hear your point. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinion on the events of the day. We'll continue the conversation about what happened in New Orleans today, as well as Las Vegas. And coming up after, I got to hit a 3-minute break on the other side, or 2.5-minute break on the other side of that. I'll give you an update on what Elon Musk is saying with regard to the event in Las Vegas that involves a Cybertruck. And it's interesting because Elon Musk is an advisor to President Trump with Doge, but he also is the man behind the brilliant brains behind Tesla. And it was a Tesla product that was used to intentionally try to blow up a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. There's a tie there. We'll talk about it in about 2.5 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, in for Chris Kroc on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff in for Chris Kroc. Chris is back tomorrow night in this chair at 8:00 Rock. The Sugar Bowl normally would be on right now tonight, but it's been delayed or postponed till tomorrow at 4 p.m. East Coast time. It's 3 o'clock Dallas time. I was surprised it was moved to that time for a bunch of reasons. Again, my story is born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Didn't grow up to want to be a talk show host. Just kind of fell into it. Right place, right time. Sat in front of a mic once, and to me, it was like a drug. I couldn't get away from it. I remember walking to the program director and said, "I'm hooked. I got to do more of it." And the rest is history. And I appreciate the opportunity for Bruce Collins to give me a shot here on WBAP to fill in for Chris along the way. I just give you a common sense opinion on current events. One of the things I know, I've been in radio a long time. I know the business side of radio and the media business. What surprised me about the Sugar Bowl being postponed, was a couple things. First and foremost, people reached out to me throughout the day and said, "What, are they going to postpone the game?" And I said, "Heck, this was early on in the day." I said, "No, early on in the day. If what happened in New Orleans was just a singular event and one deranged person and authorities felt they had it under control, the worst case scenario is you don't want to move the game. You just don't. And you don't because there's significant money involved. The orchestration of moving a game and resetting a stadium and resetting all the media assets and resetting the teams and the travel schedules. Think about the people that flew into New Orleans, the UGA grads, the Notre Dame grads, all the big money guys flew in, booked a hotel, and were going to leave tonight after the game, or leave their hotel tomorrow and fly back home and go back to business. Well, now everybody's got to stop, drop, and roll and change things out. I want to hear your perspective on all these things. We're continuing the coverage of things in New Orleans as well as Las Vegas. I want to talk about Vegas and Elon Musk's response. coming up in 3 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. But first, let's check in with Trey in Duncanville, who called 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Trey, thanks for calling. I appreciate your being a part of the show and being a fan of the station. What's your perspective, Trey?
Well, thank you, first of all, for taking my call. First of all, as a human being and as a Christian, my heart goes out to the victims of New Orleans and the one in Las Vegas. It's very, very sad. It breaks my heart to see this every time. I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but this is, the game's nothing compared to human life. But, this kind of brings up a question to me is that, I have a very deep-seated fear. I'm going to be honest with you. A very deep-seated fear that ever since 9/11, they were talking about, terror cells coming into this country, and they're waiting for the right time and the right place to strike. Well, in their minds. And I just wonder if this is just a tip of the iceberg. If we're going to see, more sporting events or concerts like what happened with the Taylor Swift. I think it was in, Austria or something like that earlier this year.
Yeah, Taylor Swift concert.
Yes, and I just think we're going to see more things like that happen, unfortunately. I think you'll see it at places that we would least expect, or, we might say, well, not surprised. And that's just very disconcerting. I mean, I know we can't control what these people are going to do, but I really don't think it really matters who's the president. I think in their mind, they pretty much made up their mind. They're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, I'm old enough to remember what happened with Beirut. Was it 1984 when all those Marines were killed?
Yeah.
And the Iranians feared Reagan, but then I think it was Hezbollah that killed all those Marines. So I'm just saying, I don't think anything really scares those people if they're bound and determined to strike and attack.
Trey, I agree with you, and I agree with in one thing you said. I don't think this politically motivated has anything to do with whether it be Trump or Biden, at least in New Orleans. I don't know about the Vegas thing yet. I haven't processed all that. But I'm going to throw something out at you. I was taking the dogs for a walk before I came down to the station earlier with a buddy of mine, Earl, and we were talking. He said, what do you make of the events? And I said, you know what? And I believe this, and this is really conspiracy theorist, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not calling it that way, but it won't surprise me if the attack in New Orleans might have a little something to do with an attack on religion. Remember, Notre Dame is a Catholic university, strong, devout Catholics, and it's possible, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some inclination that this is a little bit of attack on religion. We know that the terrorist, the suspect, has pledged an allegiance to ISIS, and it won't surprise me if we find out after the fact that there's something to do. The reason that New Orleans was selected has something to do with Notre Dame football being there and Notre Dame being the pinnacle of college football and Catholicism.
Well, I'm a Catholic and a Notre Dame fan, so I would not be surprised. But I just wonder, maybe they just hate the West and its modernity and its liberalism, intolerance. And that, I think that could be a possibility. And I think also, too, there would be more attacks upon Jewish synagogues and things like that.
I agree with you on that.
We're in the middle of Hanukkah, and something I'm surprised at something that I haven't found out yet, but I'm surprised that nothing dramatic happened to some synagogue during Hanukkah.
Clearly, religion is under attack. Trey, thank you for calling from Duncanville. I appreciate you being a fan and listening to the show. Thank you very much. Let's check in with Brian from Garland. Brian, thanks for holding for a little while. You're on the Chris Crock Show. You're talking to Jeff, Westside Jeff. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. The caller that just called, that was really very good what he said. I mean, I think we're all feeling it across the U.S. I'm glad he brought that up because it's emotional for everybody. But my father, he's from Louisiana, down by the Lafayette area, and my dad's whole side of the family's there. And I tell you, it's bad. I remember when that guy went nuts over in Fort Hood. He was also part of, I want to say Muslim, and he went into Fort Hood and shot up Fort Hood. But our government and this administration coming in, along with FBI and Homeland Security, it just looks like, if you look at Israel and their security and their protocols, it's like the United States. We need to get it together. Our government does. You look what happened in 9/11. They attempted to do this the first time with those Econoline vans. They drove them underneath the World Trade Center, and they tied a lot of those guys that was involved in it into the DFW area. They had restaurants, automobile repair shops, convenience stores, and, they had the Holy Land Foundation group over here in Richardson, over here right up the street where I live. They had the Amon Carter school incident where the Prophet Muhammad deal was going on. The two guys drove in from Arizona with the guns and tried to shoot up the deal over here at Amon Carter School, and they had to blow up the cars. The FBI did with the FBI and the Garland Police Department. But our government, they just really need to get things a little bit more. It's like the cybersecurity. You look at cybersecurity is happening in our country. This is the United States, and we got Elon Musk on board, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Kash Patel. God bless these guys. Everybody needs to get together, support them. And the thing that happened in Las Vegas with the Tesla car, is that something to do with aiming at Trump having Elon Musk on his team? Because they already tried to assassinate Trump twice. So this kind of goes way back to the Kennedy days in Dallas, and they that was a big deal going on, but it still levels down to the bottom line. As far as our country, our government really needs to, and people need to stand up with this. 9/11 was enough. If that wasn't enough to wake you up, then I don't know what it's going to take. But it really is emotional for all of us. It could have happened here in Dallas. It could have happened right here at one of our downtown celebrations. It could have happened over in Fort Worth. And we really need to all get together and push more to our government and our local elected officials. Even our governor Greg Abbott. City mayors, people need to pick up the phone call tomorrow, and call and say, we've had enough. We've got to get better. We got to get better vetting. People going into the grocery stores, covering their faces up, all these women from these other countries. That needs to stop.
Brian, I appreciate you calling. Thank you for your opinion. I hear you loud and clear. And you say it could have happened in Dallas. Let me remind you, in a week from Friday night, there's a game in Arlington, Texas, with Ohio State Buckeyes coming in to play the Texas Longhorns at AT&T Stadium. Those are vulnerable sites. Super Bowls, big events like this. You can't legislate to get them. And my immediate thought on this is one thing. You can't have enough security. We live in a free society, and you cannot absolutely eliminate that, unfortunately. And that's part of the beautiful thing of being a free society. I want to continue this conversation, Brian. You bring up some good points. I want to talk about it. Got to hit top of the hour news with Mickey Briggs in the newsroom in 2 minutes. On the other side of that, I want to continue the conversation. What can we do to improve security to try to eliminate and alleviate attacks like that? And I want to hear your input. My name's Jeff, Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.